The Germanic tribe known as the Franks established and ruled the Frankish Empire in the ancient territory of Gaul, encompassing modern-day France and parts of modern-day Germany. Over the course of the empire's history, two dynasties, the Merovingian dynasty and the Carolingian dynasty, ruled over these territories. The Merovingian dynasty, under its founder King Clovis I, was responsible for uniting all of the Frankish kingdoms under one crown. Clovis and the Merovingian dynasty expanded the presence and influence of the Franks through parts of Western and Central Europe. The power of the Merovingian dynasty waned by the end of the 7th century, and Pepin the Short, a member of the Carolingian family, became king in the middle of the 8th century. His ascendancy to the throne launched the beginning of the Carolingian Empire. The Carolingian Empire ruled the Frankish kingdom until the end of the 10th century. It was one of the most powerful empires in Western Europe during the Middle Ages. The modern state of France would evolve from the Frankish Empire. The Franks were originally a Germanic tribe that invaded portions of Roman territory from the 3rd to the 5th century. The Salian Franks emerged as a subgroup of the early Franks and were known for being particularly militaristic. They would also go on to spread Christianity throughout Western Europe. King Clovis was the first Frankish king and was responsible for uniting the disparate Frankish tribes into one kingdom called Francia. At the urging of his wife Clotilda, King Clovis converted to Catholicism, and thus was the first Catholic king to rule over the area. He also established a precedent for future Frankish kings to rule as Catholics. Clovis's conversion to Christianity guaranteed support and aid from Catholic Rome. It also eased tensions between the Franks and the Catholic population in Gaul, which was more willing to accept a Catholic king. Clovis's religion impacted the future course of Western and Central Europe as he spread his religious beliefs throughout the nearly entire region. Clovis is regarded as the founder of the Merovingian dynasty. The Merovingian dynasty replaced the Western Roman Empire and reigned over the Frankish Empire. The Merovingian dynasty was a hereditary dynasty that began with Childeric I, the leader of the Salian Franks and the father of Clovis. Clovis is traditionally considered the first major leader of the Merovingian dynasty, as he successfully united all the Franks under Merovingian rule. The dynasty ruled the Frankish Empire for the following 300 years. Clovis's decision to convert to Catholicism not only shaped the political but also the social and cultural structure of the Frankish Empire. The monarchy and the elite were closely linked to the church during the Merovingian period and would oftentimes use the church for their own advantage. Monasteries were often given to members of the elite who were willing to offer their support to the Merovingian dynasty. The nobility would also donate large tracts of land to monasteries in order to circumvent certain taxation laws, which made it easier to keep land in the same family for generations. This resulted in a very close relationship between the wealthy and monastic communities. Elite families were known to appoint family members to high positions in the monastery. Additionally, families would send their adult offspring who could not be married off to live in the monastery. During the reign of the Merovingian dynasty, there were new developments in art and architecture, most of which corresponded with the growth of the monasteries and the Catholic Church. The construction of churches during this period combined the old tradition of the Roman-style basilica with new styles and influences from places such as Syria and Armenia. Most churches were built out of stone, and some were very ornate, with intricate mosaics and marble columns. Under Merovingian rule, the Franks introduced the use of a sarcophagus positioned behind the altar. This was new and distinctive, a feature in church architecture with no Roman precedent. The Merovingian period was also known for its skilled craftsmen, who were recognized throughout Europe for their glassmaking and stone masonry. Merovingian craftsmen were used in England to revive glassmaking, and the stonemasons were also employed in England to build churches throughout the country. In 732, the Battle of Tours was fought between the Franks and the Muslims. The Franks were victorious, successfully fending off the Muslims and preventing them from advancing further into Europe. The victory at the Battle of Tours was one of the integral factors leading to the rise of the Carolingian dynasty and the creation of the Carolingian Empire. The Carolingians dominated the Frankish Empire and expanded their power through Europe for the following century. Today, scholars mark the beginning of the Carolingian Empire with the crowning of Charlemagne, also known as Charles I or Charles the Great, and his coronation by Pope Leo III in 800. The age of Charlemagne spanned from 768 to 814. Charlemagne is referred to as Charles I in the history of France, Germany, and the Holy Roman Empire. This reflects his widespread influence throughout Western Europe, as well as parts of Central Europe. Charlemagne's reign shaped the course of history in Western Europe, and the entire history of the Middle Ages in the West. Charlemagne was also responsible for spreading Christianity throughout large portions of Western and Central Europe. The spread of Christianity was forcefully imposed on peoples that Charlemagne conquered and ruled. After successfully conquering the Saxons to the east, Charlemagne strictly enforced the observance of Christianity and enforced the death penalty for the practice of German paganism, which was the most popular form of religion among the Saxons. During Charlemagne's reign, he successfully extended the influence and presence of the Frankish Empire to cover nearly the entire territory ruled by the Western Roman Empire centuries before. Court scholars turned to the text of classical scholars to try and recreate the glory of old Rome. They looked to the Roman Empire of the 4th century for inspiration. The movement was largely limited to elite members of the court, who tried to prepare young men for careers in the service of government or church. This time period saw the preservation and duplication of ancient and classical text, and a creation of a new and more legible system of script called the Carolingian minuscule. The Carolingian minuscule provided a common writing style and a more universal medieval Latin that improved communications throughout Europe for centuries to follow. During his reign, Charlemagne brought scholars from all over Europe to his court and ordered the creation of schools to address the growing problem of adding new peoples to his empire. One of the primary objectives of these schools of scholars was to create a universal curriculum to be used at new schools. The scholars were responsible for creating textbooks, establishing the basic foundations of medieval education. A major theme throughout was an attempt to unite diverse cultural and ethnic groups within the kingdom. Charlemagne died in 814. And, following his death, his son Louis the Pious peacefully took control of his father's empire. Hostility, chaos, and civil war ensued. He divided the land among his sons. The Treaty of Verdun in many ways marked the beginning of the end of the Frankish Empire. It created an official division of the Frankish Empire into 3 separate kingdoms, which were to be ruled by Louis the Pious' sons, Lothar, Charles the Bald, and Louis the German, which would become the modern-day nations of Italy, France, and Germany, respectively. The dividing of Charlemagne's empire between his grandsons caused its decline, and is one substantial reason for the decline of the Frankish Empire. External threats from all directions also contributed to its collapse. Scandinavian Normans, also known as Vikings, represented one of the more severe threats to the Frankish realm, particularly as a result of the Viking raids along the region's coastlines and rivers. The Frankish Empire also faced attacks from the Hungarians from the east and threats from the Muslim forces to the south. In summary, the Franks were a Germanic tribe who invaded the ancient territory of Gaul and established the kingdom of Francia following the fall of the Roman Empire. Over the course of its history, two dynastic families, the Merovingians and the Carolingians, ruled over the Frankish Empire. King Clovis of the Merovingian dynasty, and the first Frankish king, who was responsible for uniting the kingdom of Francia, converted to Catholicism in 496. His conversion and the subsequent conversion of his people transformed and shaped the future history of Western and Central Europe. The Carolingian family, primarily under the reign of Charlemagne, dominated Western and Central Europe through territorial expansion and a cultural revival during this period. The fall of the Frankish Empire resulted from infighting between the descendants of Charlemagne and the external threats from other civilizations such as the Normans, the Muslims, and the Hungarians.